So when you picture Japan today, what comes to mind? Probably bustling cities like Tokyo, right? Cutting-edge tech, amazing food, and a culture that is literally spread all over the globe. But what if I told you that this global powerhouse was once one of the most closed-off nations on the entire planet? For over 200 years, its borders were slammed shut.
And that's the big question we're going to tackle. How on earth did Japan go from being a total hermit kingdom to a worldwide icon? It's an absolutely incredible story of warriors, wars, and a transformation so fast it'll make your head spin. It really shows you how quickly a nation can reinvent itself. Okay, let's get into it.
All right, so our story starts way back, centuries ago, in a Japan where power wasn't quite where you'd think it would be. See, on paper, the country was ruled by a divine emperor from a central court. But in reality, that power was slipping away, and that created the perfect conditions for a legendary class of warriors to rise up.
At the very top, at least in name, you had the emperor. You got to think of him as the spiritual head of the nation, almost a living god. But over time, the imperial court got way more interested in poetry and fancy ceremonies than in, actually governing the country. This left a huge power vacuum, and ambitious lords out in the provinces started getting stronger and stronger.
And this, of course, is where the samurai enter the picture. These guys were the elite warriors, the military muscle for those powerful regional landowners called the daimyo. So as the emperor's actual power just kind of faded away, the real power shifted to these warrior clans and their samurai armies. It created this whole new feudal system based on loyalty and who had the biggest army.
Well, eventually, the strongest warrior clans went to war for total control. In 1192, a clan leader named Minamoto no Yoritono came out on top, and he did something brilliant. He didn't get rid of the emperor, no, he had the emperor appoint him as the shogun, or great general. This was a genius move. It basically set up a military dictatorship where the shogun was the real ruler of Japan, while the emperor was kept around as a symbolic figurehead. And get this system would last for almost 700 years. Now, the samurai's power was put to the ultimate test when the Mongol Empire, the biggest empire the world had ever seen, tried to invade, not once, but twice. And both times, just as the samurai were fighting for their lives on the beaches, a massive typhoon roared in out of nowhere and completely obliterated the Mongol fleet. The Japanese called it the kamikaze, the divine wind, believing the gods themselves had saved them. It was a legendary win, but it came at a huge cost. The defense effort pretty much bankrupted the shogunate, and they couldn't afford to pay the samurai, which, as you can imagine, caused some serious problems down the line. And those problems festered, eventually helping to tear the country apart. Japan plunged into a century of non-stop, brutal civil war. Historians call it the Sengoku period, the Warring States. The whole country was just fractured into feuding territories. But out of all this bloodshed, 3 incredible leaders would rise, one after the other, to finally piece the nation back together. First up was the absolutely ruthless Oda Nobunaga. He was one of the first to really understand the power of European firearms, which had just been introduced by traders. He used them to crush his rivals. After he died, his best general, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, finished the job of uniting the country. But it was the third guy, the patient, super cunning Tokugawa Ieyasu, who locked it all down, winning one final massive battle to become the undisputed master of Japan.
And after all that war, what followed was peace. A long, long peace. The shogunate that Tokugawa Ieyasu set up would rule over a totally unified Japan for 268 years without a single major interruption. This whole era, called the Edo period, was a time of incredible stability, which allowed so much of what we think of as traditional Japanese culture to really flourish.
Now, to make sure this peace lasted, the Tokugawa shogunate made a pretty radical decision. They were terrified that foreign influence, especially Christianity, would destabilize everything and kick off another civil war. So in 1639, they implemented a policy called Sakoku, which literally means closed country. Japan's borders were sealed shut. All foreigners were kicked out, and any Japanese person who dared to leave was forbidden from ever coming back, under penalty of death.
You'd think that cutting yourself off from the world would lead to stagnation, right? Well, what's so fascinating is that the opposite happened. This was a time of incredible internal growth. With no foreign wars to worry about, a uniquely Japanese culture just exploded. This is the time of kabuki theater, haiku poetry, and those famous woodblock prints. The economy boomed, the population doubled, and the country built roads and schools, turning inward to perfect its own little world. But, you can't hide from the world forever. By the middle of the 1800s, the Industrial Revolution had completely changed the West. Suddenly, they had these powerful steam-powered navies, and they were sailing all over the globe looking for new places to trade. Japan's 2-century-long nap was about to get a very loud wake-up call.
And here it is, the moment it all changed. In 1853, 4 American warships just steamed right into what we now call Tokyo Bay. The Japanese had never seen anything like them, these massive, smoke-belching steamships. They called them the Black Ships. Their commander, Commodore Matthew Perry, had a letter from the U.S. president with a message that was not subtle at all. Open up your country for trade, or else.
And the shogunate really had no choice. I mean, just look at the tech gap here. Japan was a nation of samurai with swords and maybe some old muskets. The Americans had steam-powered warships with cannons that could level a city from miles away. The difference was just immense. They knew they couldn't win a fight, so they had to give in and sign treaties that forced them to open their doors to the world.
Giving in to the foreigners was seen as a massive national humiliation, and it completely shattered the authority of the Tokugawa shogunate. Powerful clans in the south, who never really liked the Tokugawa anyway, saw their chance. They rallied people under the banner of Revere the Emperor, Expel the Barbarians, and used the young Emperor Meiji as a symbol to launch a civil war. They won. The shogunate was toppled, and after almost 7 centuries, power was officially restored to the emperor.
And what happened next is one of the most incredible stories of national transformation ever. This event, the Meiji Restoration, kicked off a period of modernization so fast it's almost unbelievable. Japan's new leaders knew they were in a desperate race. Their motto was, "Rich country, strong army," and they meant it. They completely abolished the entire feudal system. Goodbye samurai class. They built railroads and telegraph lines. They created a modern army, a public school system, and they sent people all over the world to learn everything they could about industry, science, and government. They basically transformed Japan from a medieval society into a modern industrial power in just 1 generation.
And boy did they catch up. Having built this powerful modern nation, Japan decided to do what all the Western powers were doing, build an empire. And this new path, well, it would lead them to some shocking military victories, but ultimately to absolute devastation. With its brand new army and navy, Japan quickly became a serious military force. First, they defeated their massive neighbor, China. And then, in 1905, they absolutely stunned the world by defeating Russia. This was huge. It was the first time in modern history that an Asian country had defeated a major European power. After taking over Korea in 1910, Japan had successfully copied the Western colonial playbook and made itself the top dog in Asia. But over the next few decades, something shifted. An extreme ultranationalist brand of militarism started to take over the country. The military gained more and more control over the government, and they pushed for even more expansion to grab the resources Japan lacked. This aggressive push led them to launch a full-scale invasion of China in 1937, a really brutal war that set off alarm bells all over the world, especially in the United States.
So, in response to Japan's actions in China, the U.S. hit them with a crippling oil embargo. This was a deal-breaker for Japan, which had to import pretty much all of its oil. Feeling backed into a corner, Japan's military leaders made a couple of fateful choices. They signed an alliance with Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy. And then they decided to risk it all on one massive preemptive strike against the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor, hoping they could knock America out of the fight before it even began.
Of course, the attack on Pearl Harbor did the exact opposite. It dragged the United States into World War II, kicking off a long, brutal 4-year war across the entire Pacific Ocean. That war, which cost millions and millions of lives, finally came to an end in August of 1945, when the United States dropped atomic bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, forcing Japan's unconditional surrender. And from the literal ashes of total defeat rose one of the most amazing economic stories of all time. Under American occupation, Japan was demilitarized and turned into a democracy. And then the nation shifted its entire focus away from military conquest and toward economic development. And the results? They were just staggering. In just 10 years, the economy was bigger than it was before the war. And by 1968, Japan had become the second largest capitalist economy in the entire world. And this quote really sums it up perfectly. After the absolute horror of the war, the Japanese people just poured all of that energy and their famous work ethic into rebuilding their country. But this time, they weren't building an empire. They were building a peaceful economic giant, a global leader in cars, electronics, and technology. So think about that journey for a second. From a feudal society of samurai to 200 years of total isolation, to a mad dash to modernize, building an empire, devastating defeat, and then a miraculous rebirth as an economic superpower. Japan's history is just one radical change after another. Which leaves us with one last question to ponder. After a journey this wild and extraordinary, what could possibly come next?